just doing that. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're doing our second installment into into our reading Harry Potter for the first time. And today, why does it keep doing that? Anyway, we're talking about the Chamber of Secrets. I finished this book a couple of days ago. I've decided that we're gonna give it a rating of 4.7 because I think 5 stars is too high, but I think 4.5 doesn't really do a good job at capturing how I feel about the book. But I did finish it, and I thought we could just sit here and talk about some plot points that I really enjoyed, as well as some quotes that I thought were really nice, as well as some things that I wish were in the movie but aren't. So yeah, let's get into it. So I want to reiterate, same as last time, this is not... Why does it keep doing that? This is not a spoiler-free video. I can't be bothered. And so we start with chapter 1, The Worst Birthday. So Harry has just finished his first year at Hogwarts, and is now back at home with the Dursleys for the summer until September 1st, when his second year will start. And we start on his 12th birthday, I think, where he's obviously not having a good time. His uncle and him are going at it about Hedwig, because his Uncle Vernon has forbade Harry from letting Hedwig out of her cage. And the Dursleys don't know that Harry is not allowed to practice magic outside of Hogwarts. So he kind of is using this as a way to kind of get them out of his way, essentially. They have locked his spell and wizard items in the cupboard under the stairs, so Harry is not really allowed to use any of it. And they are preparing for a visit from a couple who are friends with his Uncle Vernon, I think, and are basically running through kind of how everyone should act and where they should be. I think I fixed the framing issue. Okay. Anyway, so, like I said, Harry has been told to stay up in his room, not make any noise. So he goes up to his room to where he finds this little kind of elf creature. And this is the first chapter where we're introduced to Dobby. And Dobby has come to meet Harry Potter to basically warn him to not go to Hogwarts. So we're now on our chapter 2, Dobby's warning, and this chapter is basically Dobby warning Harry Potter from returning to Hogwarts, as something terrible will befall Harry if he manages to get there. You also find out that Dobby is the reason Harry has not been getting any of Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid's letters. And it's really sad because Harry kind of thought he just didn't have any friends anymore. But Dobby actually ends up getting Harry into trouble. On Petunia's masterpiece of a pudding, the mountain of cream and sugared violets was floating up near the ceiling. On top of a cupboard in the corner crouched Dobby. So Dobby ends up getting Harry in trouble by dropping this pudding just on the floor. And then basically Dobby just disappears out of sight. And this ends up getting Harry in trouble with his Uncle Vernon, as well as the Wizarding World, because obviously if Harry's the only wizard that lives in this house, and if they, if magic happens from this house, they just assume that it's Harry. So Harry gets a letter from the Improper Use of Magic office at the Ministry of Magic, for a warning against underage practice of magic. This whole ordeal ends with Uncle Vernon basically locking Harry in his room, fitting metal bars on Harry's window, as well as installing a cat flap so that food could be pushed inside of Harry's room, and was only ever let out to use the bathroom in the morning and the evening, which is child abuse. Next, we get to the bookstore, which they have to then buy all of Lockhart's books. And Harry is telling them how Lucius Malfoy was in the shop that he was hiding in. And Arthur Weasley asks if he bought anything, to which Harry says no, he was selling. And then Mr. Weasley says, so he's worried. Oh, I'd love to see Lucius Malfoy for something. And obviously Molly's like telling him to be careful, that the family's trouble, and don't go biting off more than you can chew. And Arthur Weasley's like, so you don't think I'm a match for Lucius Malfoy? This chapter we do get to physically meet Gilderoy Lockhart. He's at a book signing, and he recognizes Harry Potter. He recognizes the scar, and the scene starts like a little snowball of Harry's like problem with Gilderoy Lockhart and first year Colin Creevey in this book. Sometimes it can get a bit of annoying because it's obvious that Harry's uncomfortable and it's not stopping. So it's like a little bit annoying, not gonna lie, but anyway. So yes, Gilderoy offers to take a picture with Harry for the Daily Prophet and ends up giving him all new signed copies of all the books they need for Hogwarts, to which our lovely little Harry slips the new books into Ginny's cauldron and says that he will buy his own. So it's sweet. We love it. Anyway, Ron kind of like, I don't know. Oh, shit. Okay. I love Ron in the movies, but I think the Ron in the books, he's so unhinged. Like, it's just, like, there's a couple things that I've underlined in this book of just Ron being completely out of pocket and out of the, like, movie character that, you know, we're all quite familiar with. But Harry and Hermione grab the back of Ron's jacket, to which Mr. Malfoy spots Arthur Weasley and they start going at it. And Arthur is like, you know, throwing shit back at him too, but it's like, I'll read you a part of it. And it says, obviously not, Mr. Malfoy said. Dear me, what's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it? Mr. Weasley flushed darker than either Ron or Ginny. We have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of Wizard Malfoy, he said. Clearly, said Mr. Malfoy. The company you keep, Weasley, and I thought your family could sink no lower. Which, don't bring Hermione and her family into this. And anyway, Arthur like throws himself at Lucius, and they start like hitting him. There was a thud of metal as Ginny's cauldron went flying. Mr. Weasley had thrown himself at Mr. Malfoy, knocking him backward into the bookshelf. Dozens of heavy spellbooks came thundering down on all their heads. There was a yell of, "Get him, Dad," from Fred or George. Mrs. Weasley was shrieking, "No, Arthur, no." The crowd stampeded backward, knocking more shelves over. "Gentlemen, please, please," said the assistant, and then, louder than all, "Break it up there, gents, break it up." Hagrid was wading toward them through a sea of books. In an instant, he pulled Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy apart. Mr. Weasley had a cut lip, and Mr. Malfoy had been hit in the eye with an encyclopedia of toadstools. He was still holding Ginny's old Transfiguration book. He thrust it at her, his eyes glittering with malice. "Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you." Pulling himself out of Hagrid's grip, he beckoned Draco and swept from the shop. I was like, get him, Mr. Weasley. Anyway, the Whomping Willow is obviously alive, and there's this little like piece of dialogue Ron has, and it's like, "Can you believe our luck?" said Ron miserably, bending down to pick up Scabbers. "Of all the trees we could have hit, we had to get the one that hits back." Oh, you're so funny. There's also this thing that I really like in this book that happens, is that there's little like throwbacks to different books and everything. So in this chapter we have, last term Harry and Ron had helped Gryffindor win the house championship, beating Slytherin for the first time in 7 years. Which is cool. I liked it. Although, didn't Hermione also help? Or am I just not remembering correctly? Anyway, this is the Mandrake episode, which I was expecting to read this and have the part where Neville faints, but Neville doesn't faint in this book. Or, not in this book. In this chapter. In the movie, he, like, faints. But he doesn't faint in the book. But what's also fun is the description for the mandrakes. It says, instead of roots, a small, muddy, and extremely ugly baby popped out of the earth. The leaves were growing right out of its head. He had pale green mottled skin and was clearly bawling at the top of his lungs. There's also a lot of people we meet that were also in the first book as well. And I think that's what I like most about the books, is that in the movies we meet people, but like we barely see them. Like, this is a school in which if I'm walking around and I'm you know, in my grade, I should pretty much be seeing the same people every day. But you don't really get that in the movies, and in the book there's a lot more and kind of like interaction between them, which I understand nobody's going to want to see that long of a movie, but I'm just, you know, kind of happy that we get it, you know, in the book. It says Harry spent a lot of time over the next few days dodging out of sight whenever he saw Gilderoy Lockhart coming down the corridor. Harder to avoid was Colin Creevey, who seemed to have memorized Harry's schedule. It's like, anyway, it's kind of like annoying, you know? This is also the chapter of Eat Slugs. Poor Ron. But Ron's obviously very broken wand ends up backfiring and causing Ron to spit up slugs for a while. They go to Hagrid's house to kind of help Ron stop puking slugs. And there's a scene that I really was confused on. So in the movie, Hermione knows what mudblood means. She's obviously quite upset at being called it. In the book, she doesn't know what it means. She's like, Malfoy called Hermione something. It must have been really bad because everyone went wild. It was bad, said Ron hoarsely, emerging over the table looking pale and sweaty. Malfoy called her mudblood, Hagrid. Ron dived out of sight again as a fresh wave of slugs made their appearance. Hagrid looked outraged. He didn't, he growled at Hermione. He did, she said, but I don't know what it means. I could tell it was really rude, of course. It's about the most insulting thing he could think of, gasped Ron, coming back up. Mudblood's a really foul name for someone who's muggle-born. You know, non-magic parents. There are wizards like Malfoy's family who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pureblood. I mean, the rest of us know it doesn't make a difference at all. Look at Neville Longbottom. He's pureblood and he can barely stand a cauldron the right way up. And they haven't invented a spell our Hermione can't do, said Hagrid proudly, making Hermione go a brilliant shade of red. It's a disgusting thing to call someone, said Ron. Dirty blood, you see, common blood, it's ridiculous. Most wizards these days are half-blood anyway. If we hadn't married muggles, we'd have died out. This is also the chapter where Harry and Ron receive their punishment for flying this car through London. And Harry has been tasked with replying to Lockhart's fan mail. And this is the first chapter where we see, or where we hear the chilling voice in the movies. So it's like, come to me, let me rip you, let me tear you, let me kill you. Obviously Harry is the only one to hear this. He just goes back to his dorm where him and Ron kind of talk about just how bad each of them had for their detention. Slipping out, and this is also the second time we hear the voice as they making it out of the dungeons. And this is Harry's kind of chance, he thinks, to follow it, and he ends up running towards it and finding the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air beware scrawled across a wall in red paint, as well as Mrs. Norris hanging from a torch bracket. And they're all like, she's dead, we're gonna get in trouble. And before they can even leave, all the students make their way into the hall and see Ron, Hermione, and Harry in front of Mrs. Norris, and then Draco shouts, "Enemies of the air, beware, you'll be next, mudbloods." Filch obviously is absolutely distraught and basically asks for their expulsion without much evidence. Snape does his little tirade all the time that he has to do and basically says that Harry should be deprived of certain privileges until he's ready to tell us the whole story, which he means by taking him off the Gryffindor Quidditch team. To which Professor McGonagall says, "I have seen no reason to stop the boy from playing Quidditch. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. There is no evidence that Potter has done anything wrong." Thank you, McGonagall. That was great of you. Thank you. So we're on to the next chapter, which is Writing on the Wall, I think. Yes, chapter 9, Writing on the Wall. There's something that happens in the movie where they finally get up the courage to ask Professor McGonagall about the Chamber of Secrets. In the book, it's Professor Binns, who is a ghost teacher, I guess. He teaches the history of magic. And Granger asks if she was wondering if he could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets. He's not quite happy with this. He deals with facts and not myths and legends. To which Hermione replies that don't all legends have a basis in facts, to which he agrees with. And basically this just starts an entire conversation of basically him getting more and more upset by them asking questions about the Chamber of Secrets. And this is also the first time where we are introduced to this idea that there's a monster in the Chamber of Secrets. We do not know what yet. Well, the reader might know if you've seen the movies. And this causes Harry to kind of be a little bit paranoid about his sorting the year before, in which he pleads with the Sorting Hat to not put him in Slytherin. And he's like, well, maybe I did belong in Slytherin. And, you know, he starts panicking about that. This is also the chapter where we get sort of a tiny little foreshadowing glimpse into Aragog. Hermione was pointing at the topmost pane where about 20 spiders were scuttling, apparently fighting to get through a small crack. A long silvery thread was dangling like a rope, as though they had all climbed up in their hurry to get outside. Also the point where we start talking about a Polyjuice potion. They want to try to use it to infiltrate the Slytherin common room to ask Draco straight up if he knows who the heir of Slytherin is, or is it him? And this takes a while. So we have to go through a few chapters to get there. Going to go really fast in the next couple of chapters, but now we're on chapter 10, which is the Rogue Bludger, and this is obviously when Dobby starts messing with the Bludger during a Quidditch game between Gryffindor and Slytherin, with Draco being Slytherin's seeker and Harry being Gryffindor's seeker. And this causes Harry to get whacked in the arm by a bludger, snapping it in half. Gilderoy thinks he can help, ends up removing all of Harry's bones in his arm. So now Harry has to go to the infirmary to have Madame Pomfrey regrow his bones. And then at the end of this chapter, Harry Potter sees the first student being petrified. Well, not being petrified, but being brought into the infirmary. He sees Dumbledore, Minerva, McGonagall next to the bed where Colin Creevey is laying petrified. Next we have chapter 11, also going to go quite quickly through this one. This is the Dueling Club. This is obviously when they start planning more and more of the Polyjuice potion. Next we have the dueling thing where obviously Malfoy makes a snake appear and trying to tell the snake not to attack Justin. It sounds more like he's egging the snake on. which is obviously not good for Harry, considering everyone's looking out for the heir of Slytherin, and Salazar Slytherin was a really famous parcel tongue. If you don't know what that means, it means he could talk to snakes. Then, in this same chapter, Justin is found lying on the floor, rigid and cold, a look of shock frozen on his face, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, and that wasn't all. Next to him was another figure, the strangest sight Harry had ever seen. It was nearly headless Nick, no longer pearly white and transparent, but black and smoky, floating immobile and horizontal 6 inches above the floor. His head was half off, and his face wore an expression of shock identical to Justin's. So we now find out that Justin and nearly headless Nick have both been petrified, which again isn't good for Harry, because Peeves starts making his way through the corridor screaming, "Attack, attack, another attack, no mortal, a ghost is safe, run for your lives, attack." And obviously everyone starts rushing out of the classrooms and sees Harry sitting there alone in front of Justin and nearly headless Nick, and everyone's like, oh well, Harry has to be the heir of Slytherin because nobody else saw him do this, but since he's here alone in the hallway, it has to have been him. So he ends up going to Dumbledore, and this is the first time we meet Fawkes, the Phoenix, and as well as Harry and the Sorting Hat having a little conversation about him being put into Gryffindor, but the Sorting Hat saying you would have done well in Slytherin, which is obviously not something Harry wants to hear. Fawkes ends up dying because he's a Phoenix. Just kind of happens that way. And he's really, stupefied. He's just like, of course, well, I'm here alone. Dumbledore's bird has to die. But Dumbledore reassures him that it wasn't his fault. Next, this is... Oh, I didn't say. We're at chapter 10 right now. Or chapter 12, the Polyjuice Potion. This is when they finally take the Polyjuice Potion, and we all know it only works for Harry and Ron because Hermione ends up actually picking off cat hair and not human hair. So she's been unfortunately turned into a cat. So she has to spend a couple days in the infirmary, obviously. But Harry and Ron do eventually make it down to the Slytherin Common Room to meet Malfoy. And Malfoy essentially tells them, you keep asking this question, I've already told you 100 times, I do not know who it is. Though if I did, I would help them, honestly. And he ends up showing both of them a cutout from the Daily Prophet, which basically says that Mr. Weasley has been fined 50 galleons for bewitching a muggle car, which is obviously not a good thing. And Malfoy laughs at it. Obviously, Ron is quite peeved, but they do make it back. See Hermione has turned into a cat, take her to the hospital wing, and Moaning Myrtle is like, wait till everyone finds out you've got a tail. So the next is chapter 13. Maybe I'm going to speed through this one again too. This is the very secret diary. This is where Harry finds Tom Riddle's diary in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. At this point, Harry finds out that this book is kind of a gateway into Riddle's memories, and he sees Riddle catching the guy who opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago, and he finds that it's Hagrid. Next is chapter 14. We meet Cornelius Fudge in this, who is the Minister of Magic, who comes to take away Hagrid, although Dumbledore assures him that it won't change anything, it's not going to help. And then Lucius Malfoy shows up to tell Dumbledore that the governors have agreed that Dumbledore's time has come and that he needs to step down from. And we get two of my favorite quotes in this book, which is, however, said Dumbledore, speaking very slowly and clearly so that none of them could miss a word, You will find that I will only have truly left this school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it," as well as Hagrid's little spiel about following the spiders. And that segues into chapter 15. This chapter is called Aragog. This is the time where we meet this massive spider and his little spider colony. And there's this funny little thing that happens, and this is what I mean when I say that Ron is unhinged in the books. There's a little scene where everyone finds out that Dumbledore has been asked to step down, and Snape, they're in potions class, and Malfoy is talking about says, "Yeah, right," said Malfoy, smirking. "I expect you'd have Father's vote, sir, if you wanted to apply for the job. I'll tell Father you're the best teacher here, sir." Snape smirked as he swept off around the dungeon, unfortunately not spotting Seamus Finnegan, who was pretending to vomit in his cauldron. "I'm quite surprised the Mudbloods haven't all packed up their bags by now," Malfoy went on. "Bet you 5 galleons the next one dies. Pity it wasn't Granger." To which Ron leaps off his chair. And he said, "Let me at him," Ron growled as Harry and Dean hung onto his arms. "I don't care. I don't need my wand. I'm going to kill him with my bare hands." He's so unhinged. I love it. Anyway, they finally decide that they're going to go to the Forbidden Forest tonight to follow the spiders, which Ron is absolutely not happy about at all. He has an intense fear of spiders. So they make it into the Forbidden Forest, where they're captured by Aragog and his mighty army of spiders. They start basically asking Aragog questions about how the Chamber of Secrets has been opened again, and just what is down there and what's doing this. And then he goes on to say that Hagrid never opened the Chamber of Secrets, and that he was protecting him, so him and Aragog are tight, and says that the thing that lives in the castle, said Aragog, is an ancient creature we spiders fear above all others. Well, I do remember how I pleaded with Hagrid to let me go when I sensed the beast moving about the school. And he won't say what the beast is, just that it's a mortal enemy of the spiders. And then he's like, "Oh, Hagrid's our friend, and my children are told not to eat Hagrid, but I don't really care about you guys, so run." Basically. So they end up getting back in time into their dorm, where they finally figure out that maybe the girl who died in the bathroom 50 years ago was Moaning Myrtle. We're on to chapter 16, called The Chamber of Secrets. So we get to chapter 16, called The Chamber of Secrets. And this is the, unfortunately, the chapter where Hermione is petrified. And they go to see Hermione, and they find this piece of balled up paper in her fist, which is a page torn from a very old library book, and which basically just says that the basilisk is a snake that has a murderous stare, and all who are fixed in the beam of its eye shall suffer instant death. And the snakes, it's the spider's mortal enemy. And that the basilisk flees only from the crowing of the rooster, which is fatal to it. Which is foreshadowing. Or is it? I don't know. Anyway. So they basically also end up finding out the reason that only Moaning Myrtle died is because everyone didn't actually look directly at it, because Colin saw it through his camera, Justin saw it through Nearly Headless Nick, who couldn't die again, Hermione and the Ravenclaw prefect, who were together during that, who both got petrified, saw it through a mirror, and that Mrs. Norris saw it through the water coming from Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. And they also end up figuring out that maybe the Chamber of Secrets opening is through Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. You also find out that Ginny has been captured and taken into the Chamber of Secrets to die. And that Lockhart, who was bragged this whole time that he knows how to kill it, has been asked to go down to the Chamber of Secrets and rescue Ginny, as well as kill the basilisk, as well as kill the person who is the heir of Slytherin. So, obviously, as we all know, that's not what happens. So Harry and Ron are like, okay, well, the only thing we can do is give Lockhart all of our information that we have gathered since the beginning of this whole shit, and find that he is actually packing to leave. So they disarm him and then take him down to the Chamber of Secrets with them. And when they get down there, Lockhart takes Ron's wand, which is severely broken at this point. So Lockhart says, the adventure ends here, boys. I shall take a bit of this skin back up to the school, tell them I was too late to save the girl, and that you two tragically lost your minds at the sight of her mangled body. Say goodbye to your memories. He raised his wand's spell-taped wand over his head and yelled, "Obliviate." This causes a bit of a cave-in. Oops. This causes a bit of a cave-in and separates Ron and Lockhart from Harry. So Harry's like, just make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. I'm gonna go see if I can scout out the rest of the way to find Ginny. And that segues us into chapter 17, The Heir of Slytherin. Also, I love the artwork for this chapter. It's the book with the basilisk fang stabbed into it. So Harry eventually finds Ginny lying in this huge room. So he goes to find her, and he finds that she's almost dead, basically. And this is when we for real meet Tom Riddle. And he basically admits to using Ginny to become real. And he airs a lot of Ginny's, a lot of Ginny's secrets, which is not cool. Not cool at all. And he basically says that she was basically not aware of anything that she was doing. To which starts his other spiel about framing Hagrid for opening the Chamber of Secrets when it was really him, and that Dumbledore never really trusted him and always kept an eye on him after that. I also find that Tom Morello Riddle is an anagram for I am Lord Voldemort. Is it an anagram? Is that what it is? Something like that. In flies Fox with a sorting hat, which is like, Harry's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So they end up having like a little fight about why Harry survived, because Voldemort has failed twice to kill him, to which we find out that the only reason Voldemort failed is because Harry's mom died protecting him, and Voldemort doesn't understand love, which is why in the first book Quirrell burns to dust when he tries to touch Harry. Tom summons the basilisk to kill Harry. Harry puts the sorting hat on and just pleads to help him, until something very hard and heavy thudded on top of Harry's head, almost knocking him out. And what he pulls out is a gleaming silver sword with a handle that's glittering with rubies the size of eggs. And with this, he kills the basilisk, but also unfortunately gets infected by a basilisk fang. Because Fox's tears can heal, he's actually fine. And then he uses the basilisk fang and stabs it into the book, making Riddle, I guess, die or disappear. He tells Dumbledore that the sorting hat told me I'd done well in Slytherin. Everyone thought I was Slytherin's heir for a while because I could speak Parseltongue, which is something that never really got explained until now, but Dumbledore describes it as that maybe when Voldemort went to kill Harry, he gave some of that power to Harry because Voldemort is technically the true heir of Slytherin. He's the last remaining descendant of Salazar Slytherin, which Dumbledore or Harry says, so I should be in Slytherin. Harry said, looking desperately into Voldemort. Dumbledore's face. The Sorting Hat could see Slytherin's power in me in it. Put you in Gryffindor, said Dumbledore calmly. Listen to me, Harry. You happen to have many qualities Salazar Slytherin prized in his hand-picked students. His own very rare gift, Parseltongue, resourcefulness, determination, a certain disregard for the rules. Yet the Sorting Hat placed you in Gryffindor, and you know why that was. Think. It only put me in Gryffindor because I asked not to go in Slytherin. Exactly, which makes you very different from Tom Riddle. It is your choices, Harry, that show who we truly are, far more than our abilities. If you want proof, Harry, that you belong in Gryffindor, I suggest you look more closely at this, which he presents Harry the sword, which we didn't realize till now, but there is a name engraved below the hilt, and the name engraved is Godric Gryffindor, and only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry, said Dumbledore simply. And next is the wonderful part where Dobby becomes free because of a little trick Harry played on Mr. Malfoy. And then Dobby protects Harry from a blow by Mr. Malfoy. That is the end of Chamber of Secrets. We finally finished, and we're on to the next. I know these are different books. Don't come for me. Anyway, we're on to this one now. Again, these will all be in a playlist together, so they're easy to find. I do plan on reading this back to back to back to back, which might not be a good idea, but I really had fun reading it. It brought back a lot of memories from childhood, and I quite enjoyed everything about it. I love learning about the new people, about the new characters, about the new parts of the world. In the Prisoner of Azkaban, we're talking about Hogsmeade now. It's really fun. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you guys stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you later. Bye.